one more try.
I want to just
What?
measure out the distance.
Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Hey there, friends. Welcome back to Second Star to the Left. I'm Michelle, and this is my daughter, Billy.
Hi.
And here's where we'll share board game reviews, ramblings, and a few wrong turns along the scenic route. We're about halfway through February, the small month where we were going to talk about small box games. And we promised you a week of Button Shy games, which those videos are done, so go have a look at those. And a week of Tiny Epic games, which are on the shelf behind me. So, it was a trick. We're not going to talk about Tiny Epic games just yet because we're still waiting on Tiny Epic Dungeons, which I think that we're going to love. And so I don't see a lot of point in ranking all the games when there's one coming in that just might top that list. So we're going to hold off on Tiny Epic Games Week until we have an entire Tiny Epic list. So it's coming, but in the meantime, it's a trick. You were promised Tiny Epic games, and instead, you're going to get small box trick-taking games. See what I did there? I was brought up playing trick-taking games.
Boring ones.
Not boring ones. I was brought up playing Pinochle, and so...
That's what I said.
No. So the second I saw trick-taking games becoming a little more popular... No. I dragged Billy in because I thought if I could convince her to play some trick-taking games, I could get her to play Pinochle. Ask me how that's going. Obviously not well. The first trick-taking game that I got Billy to play was Fox in the Forest, which we loved.
It?
Yeah, it was.
Are you sure that was?
I am positive. We're not going to talk about some of the ones that we've spent a lot of time on before. So while we love them, we are not going to talk about Fox in the Forest or Skull King or even Jekyll versus Hyde as much as it pains me because we've talked about them a lot recently. I'm sure you're tired of hearing me tell you how you need to go and play Jekyll versus Hyde. You do need to go play Jekyll versus Hyde though, just trust me.
It's pretty good.
It's on BGA. You can play it. Hop in. I'll play with you. We're going to start with the smallest box of trick-taking game that we have, and that is Claim, which is designed by Scott Alms, so it's no secret that I love this game since he designed some of my other favorite games like Food Chain Island and Unsurmountable and Ugly Griffin Inn. The reason that Billy and I got Claim is because, like Fox in the Forest, it is a trick-taking game that is specifically for two people. If you've played more traditional trick-taking games like Pinochle or Spades or Hearts or any of those, you'll know that usually you need three people or to play some kind of variant. But Claim is designed specifically for two people. It's a bit of a spin on a trick-taking game because it's played over two very distinct phases. If you've ever played Biblios, where you have the drafting phase and then the bidding phase, think of it kind of along those lines. What you're doing is you're building an army of factions that will battle for you in the second half of the game. So in the first part of the game, when you win a trick, you're going to take that card that you won and put it into your army to be used in the second half of the game. Now, these factions are goblins, knights, the undead, dwarves, and doppelgangers, and they all have very special and specific powers that work with each other. Some of those powers can only be used in the first half of the game, and some of those powers can only be used in the second half of the game, and some people should remember that, or they will have a giant handful of dwarves that will get them no points.
I wonder who could have done that.
Oops. However, at the end, what you're trying to do after the first phase when you recruit them and the second phase when you battle for the cards in the middle is you're trying to wind up with the most of each faction in front of you in a set. So at the end of the game, whoever controls 3 out of 5 of the factions will win. The art is so adorable on these. The dwarves and the knights and the goblins, really, really cute. Now, in addition to all of that and the 5 factions, there is also Claim 2. This is a
Too claim, too
standalone...
furious.
Too claim, too furious. This is a standalone expansion that gives you 5 more factions. And those factions include gnomes, giants, seers, trolls, and dragons. And again, these all work together to give you benefits and or penalties, depending on who's wielding them. And also, some of them have powers that are good in the first half, and some of them have powers that are good in the second half. Included in Claim 2 is a way to combine these so that you can play them both together. Now, you can't use all 10 factions. There are some rules about combining them to make sure that the factions that work well together are still included. You don't want to split up cards that rely on another faction for their powers or they're useless. All new adventures to try. And in addition, we have claim reinforcements and maps.
When did we get that?
Yeah, we haven't played this one yet, and it's snuck by Billy. But this one gives you 3 extra factions and locations. 3, maybe 4 extra factions and locations. We have heard kind of mixed reviews about the factions in this one being a bit overpowered, so whether you mix them in or not. But I'm interested to play with the locations, which would add another aspect to the battles and the collections at the end. This will always be my favorite of the 3. And it's tiny. We actually bought a second copy of both Claim 1 and Claim 2 so that we could throw it in a bag whenever we travel and not have to worry about grabbing it from the shelves. If you like trick taking and you want a little bit of cute art and a little bit of battle with, gnomes and giants, this is definitely one you want to check out.
Start with Claim 2. The factions are cooler.
I say start with Claim 1. If you've played them, go ahead and let us know what you think. Claim 1 or Claim 2? The next trick-taking game is a small co-op trick-taking game where you're both working together, for a common goal. This one doesn't get as much attention as its predecessor, and that's kind of a shame, and that's Fox in the Forest Duet. I will say that I like the original better just because I like a fast, basic trick-taking game sometimes. And that's why I pull Fox in the Forest out, because it's simple, because I don't have to look at the rule book, because I'm just ready to go when I play it. This one is, a little bit more complicated. It's certainly not difficult. It's
not
still
actually complicated. It's just...
it's just a little bit more, right? You are working together without talking. This one, like another that we are not going to talk about, is a co-op game. But in this case, you're moving through the forest. And Billy and I were just laughing because apparently we're trying to help a musician. I never knew that. But basically, you're trying to get all the way through the forest path and collect all the gems. You cannot speak to each other. You have to decide, of the cards in your hand, do you want to win the trick or lose the trick? Because your cards have powers like Fox in the Forest, but they also have tiny little paw prints. And if you win the trick, those paw prints are moving your way. And if you're close to the edge of the forest and the paw prints move too far your way, then you're going to get penalties in the forest where you can no longer move, which means...
It's like a bit of a balancing act. You gotta keep it near the middle, but just out far enough to grab the things you need, and then go back to the middle.
Because if you get those penalties, they could be on a space with a gem, and that means you can't go there. It's just not going to happen. It is a really fun challenge. It's a really neat little puzzle. If you want a co-op trick-taking game that's a little bit quicker and a little bit lighter, and apparently has a musician, then I would go with Fox in the Forest, especially if you like the first one and you already have kind of a sense of that world and that art style. Do you like this one better or the original better?
The original for sure. I do love Duet, but the original is just I have it memorized better, so it's easier to play.
Yeah, we haven't played this one as often. I mean, we still played this one a lot. Mm-hmm. I do think the reason that you don't hear about this one as much is because if someone's going to talk about a co-op trick-taking game, they're most likely going to talk about the crew. And if they're going to talk about Fox in the Forest, they're most likely going to talk about Fox in the Forest. I would suggest this one if you're looking for a co-op trick-taking game. The next one is Billy's favorite trick-taking game. And we picked it up because it looked like illuminated manuscripts, because it was themed in the style of King Arthur, and because it was a trick-taking game. And that game is Tournament at Camelot. Now this one is...
That wasn't a sarcastic, how could we resist? I genuinely meant that.
No, yeah, we weren't going to resist. This one is a little bit more complicated. It adds a few more levels to the trick-taking game because you are assigned a character and either a companion character or
a magic
item that you can use once your score gets low enough. Now, in this one, they're not tricks, they're battles or melees, and you're not scoring points, you're inflicting wounds. There's a really fun gimmick in this game where if someone leads a suit and you can't follow at all, then you have to take a point of damage for shame. You have to be embarrassed that you could not even compete in this melee. Your card just goes in face down, and it's just embarrassing that you could not ride into battle in the tournament. I love that. I love that your penalty cards go from robust to stable to feeble to crippled. I love that that's the description. That as you're, losing all these points in the game, your cards are reminding you that you're feeble. But not to fear, because once you're feeble, then the magic item kicks in or your companion kicks in. There are catch-up mechanisms in this game called grail items. And those items give you powers that let you catch up. There are cards that have poison on them so that you can not only win the trick, but inflict more damage.
And then some character abilities change the way poison works.
Right, so there's constantly a flux in the rules depending on what magic items are coming up and what character you have chosen.
But it's not complicated. All these things happening at once, they mesh really well with each other.
Yeah, definitely. The cards are big tarot-sized cards, which in general I don't like in a game because it's hard for me to shuffle them. But for this game, it feels right. It feels like this is the weight and the respect that this art deserves. On the back of each character card is the story of that character from Le Morte d'Arthur. Everything in this is perfectly themed. If you're in the melee tournament and you both throw out a card that would tie the same value or the same, value plus a magic item, it's a feint, like in fencing, which means those just flip over, you both miss, and then you leave those cards out there and they become extra wounds to be inflicted at the end of the next melee. This is such a good variation on a trick-taking game. If you like King Arthur, then jump in immediately. And if you just want to try a good trick-taking game with a little bit of extra in it, then jump in. The box says that this game is for 3 to 6 people, but the directions come with a 2-player variant that works perfectly well. We've played it at 3. We haven't played it any higher. I like it at 2.
We've mostly played it at 2.
Yeah, I like being able to just have a duel back and forth. I like knowing what might come up in your hand and what's going to happen if I inflict enough wounds. The artwork is beautiful. It's all based on medieval manuscripts.
Like you said at the beginning, this is my favorite trick-taking game, and I genuinely cannot recommend it enough, personally.
Yeah.
If you have even the slightest interest in it, you should give it a try.
There are a lot of trick-taking games out there.
But if you don't like it, it's her fault.
There are a lot of trick-taking games out there right now, and new ones are coming out all the time. I have not seen one that does what this one does.
If there are any more like this out there, let us know. We'd love to find them and play them.
Well, there's Tournament at Avalon, so that one doesn't count.
Yeah.
Oh, but also, I'm considering this a small box, so... The last one is our newest game, and it combines both trick-taking with area control. This is as close as you're going to get to me playing dudes on a map. This is it. And that one is called Radiant. It's fantasy artwork, which is beautifully done. And obviously, we like fantasy, given our other choices of trick-taking games. This one combines trick-taking, an element of older trick-taking games called the Meld, which is where you put down onto the table sets that are in your hand before you start the trick-taking phase of the game, which allows you to score points, but also allows your opponent to see what's in your hand. So if you're paying attention, you'll be able to use that strategy to your advantage. Now,
unless you have the memory of a goldfish like we do.
That does happen. I think I want to take a second. I probably should have done this in the beginning, but for those who don't know, trick taking itself.
It's a little late in the video.
Jump in here now. Trick taking itself is when each player at the table is putting a card down, and whoever has the highest value of those cards gets to keep all of the cards. The trick. In a trick taking game, however, one suit is generally more powerful than others. And the person who started whatever suit they led, or faction of gnomes, or trolls, or dragons, or whatever game you're playing, you have to follow if you can, which means if I play a dragon and the person next to me has a dragon, even if that card won't win, that's what they're going to need to play. Now, there are lots of other rules and there are lots of variations, but in these games, the strategy comes from knowing what your opponent has to lay down based on what you've put down on the table. I hope that helps, even in the slightest bit. Now that we got that cleared up, and I'm glad I waited until the very last game, in this game, that meld lets you see what your opponents have, which means when you're playing your cards, you're going to know at least a few of the cards in their hand, which lets you decide how to best win the trick. When you win the trick in this game, though, you get to take over one of the areas on this absolutely beautiful map. It reminds me of Broom Service.
Yeah, the art is very reminiscent. It's very good.
Yeah, it's colorful and pretty and really easy to read. So every time you win a trick, you put down a little cube and you take over that area of the map. There are 4 quadrants on the map. So at the end of each era, then of which there are 3, you add up your points, and whoever has control of an area with more than 1 cube in it gets 6 points. If it's just one little lonely guy controlling the area, you get 3. And if it's tied, you split the points. There are also coins to collect from the temples. There are portals to bounce you from one side of the map to the other. What I didn't tell Billy, because she liked this game so much, is that this one in the card playing is almost the closest to Pinochle.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was very suspicious of that, especially when the term meld came out. And I asked about it, and you said, no, never heard of that.
One day, I will drag her kicking and screaming to a Pinochle table, and then she will admit that she was wrong.
Nope.
Also, Pinocle's going to be on BGA. It's an alpha right now.
That's
anyway,
terrifying.
if you're looking for something a little bit different, I mean, a lot different in a trick-taking game, if you like area control games, and you're not sure about trick-taking games, this might be a good way to start. The rules to this one are pretty straightforward. It's not as crunchy as Tournament at Camelot as far as the card play goes, but there's definitely more strategy because you're trying to control this map. It's pretty and it's different and it's great at 2 players. It can be played at 3, and at 4 players you're playing 2 versus 2.
We've only played it at 2 so far, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I would want to play it. Maybe 3, but I don't think I would want to play teams. I mean, we don't do well at teams.
We're not the most cooperative people.
Nope. Those are the small box trick-taking games that we've been playing recently. I hope that you found something new to try. If you like The Crew, try one of these other games. If you like Skull King, definitely try one of these other games. Trick-taking is fun, and the new twists that people are putting on it are really interesting. We've been having a lot of fun at the expense of The Crew. I know that lots of people listed that as their favorite game from last year, so we don't want to pick on it too much. It is not a game that we like. It is probably a game that's going to get culled. You know, all games aren't for everyone. That's all I can say. Let me know in the comments what your favorite trick-taking game is, if you have one, and if you don't, try one of these. We will be back and have a Tiny Epic week as soon as Tiny Epic Dungeons arrives. If you like what you see,
or if you want to keep watching until we get one right,
then please like, subscribe, and share. If you want to find us elsewhere on social media, including on our Discord channel, all of that information will be listed below. We'd love to talk to you. As always, open tables, open minds, and play yourselves.
Bye.
I have giant hands at this angle. It's funny, damn it.
No, were you waiting for me to ask you?
No, I was waiting for you to comment.